Hey everybody, it's Skylar here with another episode of TMP the Musical Puppy, and today is my review for the first 4 lessons in my crash course on how to read music. I'm going to have a little bit of a passage here, like just some random notes, so you don't have to worry too much about like what the notes actually mean or anything in any sort of context. It's just one long measure of random notes, just to test you on the first 4 lessons, which is how to read the notes in a clef. How to read notes outside of the staff and everything like that, and how to read flats and sharps. I just covered the basics. I didn't do any of the special, like, like the extended stuff, like double sharps and flats or anything, because that's not too important for you right now. So this is just the basic stuff. I'm going to do one for treble clef, bass clef, and alto clef. Tenor clef I'm not really going to do because you're not going to need to know that right away, and by the time you're ready to really read tenor clef music, you'll be comfortable enough with bass clef that it'll just transfer. And you could just use the alto clef one for like reading notes, because it's the same clef, just moved over one space. But this is the treble clef one, so I'm going to let you look at it, and you can pause the video and look at your notes or look back at old videos if you see something you don't recognize. Everything was in the first 4 videos, the first 4. So I'm going to give you a couple seconds, and I'm going to give you the answers, and then we'll move on from there. Alright, so take a few seconds, pause the video. Okay. Alright, so hopefully you labeled all the notes for yourself, you wrote them down, and I'm going to go through the answers. Alright, so this is treble clef, so this is a B. This is A flat, we have the flat sign there. And then we have F, G, and F, but we have an 8 VA there, so you know what that means. It means we're going to be in the octave above, so we're going to be 3 ledger lines above, but it's still read as F, G, A, F. Just know that if you were actually reading this music, you would not play this F, but the F above. Okay? Then we come to a C sharp, we have a sharp sign there, and we have loco written above, which means the 8 VA is now canceled out, so now we're just going to play this C sharp in the middle here. We drop down to a D, a C, we jump all the way up to a C, so we can get some ledger lines in there, and a D, and we're going to have an A flat here. This is a bit of a tricky one because it's quite a long measure, but if you recall at the beginning we had an A flat there, so this A flat carries through because it's still just one measure. We're not breaking this up yet. Normally measures won't be this long, so by the time you get here you probably wouldn't have forgotten, but you might have in this, so it's a bit of a tricky one, but that is an A flat. I'm going to end on D sharp, and then D, or D natural. They're the same. We just call it D natural because we're naturalizing this D sharp, but it's still just regular D. Alright, so how did you do? How to read treble clef notes was in lesson 2. How to read ledger lines in ottava and loco, or in lesson 3. And how to read sharps and flats and naturals was in lesson 4. So if you didn't understand something, you can ask a question down below in the comments section, or you can go back to one of those videos to see it explained again, in case you missed it or forgot to write it down. Alright, so now I'm going to write out the bass clef one in case you want to be tested on bass clef. So hold on, I'll be right back. Okay, so here's the bass clef test. Basically the same stuff, just a little bit something a little different than the treble clef one. So I'm going to put it on screen. You can pause the video and take a look at it and look back at old videos, look at your notes, whatever you do to understand the stuff. I'll give you a couple seconds and then I'll show you and I'll give you the answers. Okay, we ready? So we're starting when bass. This is bass clef. So this is E, D flat, F, E, F. And we have an ottava bassa here with the dashed lines to know it's only applying to these 3 notes. So back up to the C sharp, so we know that this is just this C sharp here, it's not the one down below. And then we have B, C, B, and we have ottava here, because sometimes you might see ottava in bass clef, but in more advanced music you'll just drop up to tenor clef if it would get to that point, usually, but sometimes they write 8 VA, and you sometimes you see ottava bassa. I just thought you should recognize it. And then we come down here to this D flat. Back here we had a flat on this D. It's quite a long measure, so if you didn't get that, it is a little bit tricky. but this is all just one long measure, so this flat will carry through. And we also have loco written up here to signify that this ottava is now cancelled. So you're just playing the D flat here and not the one above, like with these. And we're ending on a G flat and then a G natural, which is just regular G. We're just calling it G natural to differentiate it from this G flat that was written here. But this is just regular G that has now been naturalized with this natural sign. So how did you do? How to read bass clef notes was in lesson 2. How to read ledger lines in ottava and ottava bassa was in lesson 3. And how to read sharps and flats was in lesson 4. So if there's something you didn't understand, you can, ask a question down below, of course, or you can go back to those old videos and see it explained in greater detail once more, in case you forgot to write it down or you just missed it or something. Okay, so now we're going to have an alto clef test. Alright, so here's the alto clef tenor test. It could also be the tenor clef test if you just pretend this top line was not here and we had another line down here, but the notes would be the same for either. But I feel like you should be more comfortable with your bass clef before worrying about tenor clef. But this is for those who are learning pretty much just viola and need to know their alto clef. But so here we go. Take a look at that, give you a few seconds. You can pause the video, of course. You can look back at your notes or at the old videos. Make sure you understand everything, and you're going to name these notes. So give you a few seconds, and I'll give you the answers. Alright, so here we go. Here is the alto clef / tenor clef test. So here we go. This is a C, G flat, D sharp. We have A, B, and A, but we have ottava written here, so they're going to be the A, B, and A written above, which you might sometimes see as a violist, especially if you play a little higher. Sometimes they'll bring it up to treble clef, so you might want to, if you're a violist, you might want to learn a little, you might want to be comfortable with treble clef as well, because you will see your music written in treble clef. But sometimes they'll just ottava it, or just write it up. You have an F here, which is written loco above it, so we're just going to play this octave down here right on the staff. Then we're going to go up to a D and an E. All right. We come down to this G flat. This was a little bit of a tricky one, because if you remember all the way back here, this G was made flat. So because this is one whole measure, and usually they won't be this big, but for the purposes of this test, this is just one big measure. And we had a flat sign that carries through the entire measure, so this G will be flat. I'm going to end on a B flat and a B natural, which is just regular B, but we call it B natural to differentiate it from this B flat here. Alright, so how did you do? How to read alto clef and also tenor clef, if you're using it for that, was in lesson 2. How to read ledger lines and ottava was in lesson 3, and how to read sharps and flats was in lesson 4. If you missed anything, go back to those videos. You can, of course, ask a question down below. But hopefully you guys are all now caught up and you're keeping up with these lessons, so we can move on to the next one. If not, like I said, leave a question or comment down below. If any of your questions are not being answered in a previous or a future video in this series, I will make one so I can address those questions if I can. All comments and everything else are welcome, of course. And thanks for watching, and please come back for the next lesson as we move on to lesson 5.